Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and I wasn't actually going to do a video today. I'm going to do a sort of standard template video with a technical analysis deep dive and show all of my live positions. That's going to be out tomorrow, ready for the week ahead. As I said, I wasn't going to do a video today, but I found something kind of crazy. So take this with a pinch of salt today, please. This is mostly for entertainment purposes. I hope you will find this entertaining though, because this is, and I've seen a few bets over the years in terms of Bitcoin, but this one is by far the craziest I've ever seen. So I really hope you'll enjoy today's episode. Let's get into it. So this starts right here with this guy, James Medlock. He says he'll bet anyone $1 million that the US does not enter hyperinflation. Balaji here, I hope I pronounced that right, says he'll take you up on that bet. And here's how it would work. He says you buy one Bitcoin and he will send you 1 million US dollars. This works out at around 40 to 1 odds, as one Bitcoin is currently worth 26k-ish, and that is around 40 times less than $1 million per coin. And here's where it gets crazy. The term is 90 days. All we need is a mutually agreed custodian who will be there to settle it in the event of a digital dollar devaluation. If somebody knows how to do this with a smart contract, we can do it on chain so he can send the USDC. He says if you won't do that, then just name a custodian. So first of all, does this guy know something that everyone else doesn't? Well, you can make your own mind up about that. There's this tweet here from, if you'll notice the date, January 30th, 2020. So this was before this P word here spread around the world. This was 2 to 3 months before all of the markets dived off a cliff and we experienced that C19 plunge. And so well ahead of the curve, he came out and said he thinks this would accelerate many pre-existing trends listed here: border closures, nationalism, social isolation, preppers, remote work, face masks, and distrust in governments. So I'm not going to give you this whole tweet. You can go and do your own research if you're interested in this. But a couple of things I do want to point out is he did make some nice predictions well ahead of the curve. He saw the face mask coming. He also saw remote work coming. He nailed that one. And he saw the medium-term trend would be 180 reversals. So this guy historically has some credibility and merit in his predictions. Not saying he'll be right about this, but strap in because we're about to go down this rabbit hole. So the first thing I wanted to point out about this is the smart contract is done. Here it is, cool idea, and you can see here it's been deployed on Etherscan. $1 million USDC versus one wrapped Bitcoin for a 90-day term bet inspired by Balaji's tweet. Man, I love the internet, and you can see this is posted on the GitHub repository system here. So, does this guy know something we don't? Essentially, he thinks that not only we're going to experience hyperinflation in the dollar, but it's going to occur over the next 90 days. And he has provided a justification below. Just as in 2008, the bankers lied. This time, the central bankers, the banks, and the bank regulators have lied to all dollar holders and depositors. He says this isn't your typical fractional reserve situation. The problem is that there isn't enough in the banks on a mark-to-market basis to cover the withdrawals. They knew this through all of last year, and they communicated it internally in their coded language. It's obvious from the graphs, which we'll get into in a minute, that central banks, the banks, and the banking regulators all knew a huge crash was coming. And of course, we have been seeing banks blow up over the last couple of weeks with the likes of Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate, and now Credit Suisse. The phrase is unrealized losses, but they have never notified you, the depositor. Instead, the regulators have allowed banks to hide their literal insolvency in footnotes until one guy figured it out. It's the Uncle Sam Bankman-Fried. Just like SBF used your deposits to buy altcoins, using accounting tricks to fool himself and others into using the money, so too did the banks. They all used the deposit to buy the ultimate Dogecoin, which is long-dated US treasuries. And they all got wrecked at the same time in the same way because they bought the same asset from the same vendor who devalued it at the same time, the Fed. Specifically, NYT admitted banks binged on enormous amounts of treasuries and other long-term bonds in 2021, when the flood of printed money cut off their typical demand for loans, and because they thought the Fed would keep interest rates low forever, which of course they did not. They had a good reason to believe this, because Powell said he'd be patient on rate hikes as late as November 3rd, 2021. Then he got renominated on November 22nd, 2021, and he hiked rates much faster than anybody had expected, which even Yellen and the FDIC admit caused the current banking crisis. So why did Powell delay? Well, probably for political reasons. Presidents don't like rate hikes, especially running into an election year of 2022, and Powell thought he could wait and just be like Paul Volcker, who was firm and then defeated inflation. But the world isn't an 80s return. Hiking from 10 years of near zero interest rates in the 2010s was a surprise attack on every single dollar holder. Economics isn't politics. The kind of insane flip-flops you see in politics don't work when there's actual contracts involved. So anyone who bets on long-term treasuries got killed in 2021, and now anyone who bets on short-term treasuries is going to get killed this year. The absolute worst place you can have large amounts of assets locked up is in 3-month treasury bills, and the circa 5% interest rate offered by big banks is a trap. Most fiat bank accounts are now a trap for those countries whose central banks followed the Fed. So you can see here, the FDIC are worried about growing unrealized losses in US bank bond portfolios. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corp is becoming concerned about the mounting unrealized losses in the US bank bond portfolio. Unrealized gains or losses, very, very bad look here. At the same time, the Federal Reserve weekly remittances to Treasury, as you can see, a concerning look. And here's more unrealized losses, lowering tangible equity capital. And if you look down the bottom, at June 30th, 2022, the tangible equity capital ratio at CBO fell to 8.7% as a result of mounting unrealized losses on securities. These totaled 1.5% of the average assets. But at the year end of 2021, only 4 community banks had tangible equity capital ratios below 5%. That number increased to 333 at June 30th, 2022, indicating less ability to sustain an economic shock. So there's a list of references here. Again, go and check this out in your own time. I'm trying to keep this video short. And there are remaining references here as Twitter has a limit on the number of links you can put in one post. He says he's moving $2 million into USDC for a bet. He said he will do it with Medlock and one other person sufficient to prove the point. Everyone else should just go and buy Bitcoin, as it will be much cheaper for you than locking up one for 90 days. So here are the terms of the bet. Ideally, someone can set up a smart contract where Bitcoin is worth more than 1 million in 90 days, then he will win. And if it's worth less than 1 million in 90 days, then the counterparty gets the 1 million in USD. Hyperbitcoinization. He says we have to define hyperbitcoinization in Bitcoin versus USD terms because all other fiat currencies can and will be inflated away. This is hyperbitcoinization. This is the moment when the world redenominates on Bitcoin as a digital gold, returning to a model much more like before the 20th century. What's going to happen is that individuals, then firms, then large funds will buy Bitcoin, then sovereigns like El Salvador and tiny crypto-friendly countries. The big move will be when the US state like Florida or Texas, or a normal country like Estonia, Singapore, Saudi, Hungary, or the United Arab Emirates buys Bitcoin. And when the government official of India tells India's central bank to buy Bitcoin, even as a hedge, it's over. So why will it be so fast? Remember, he's calling for this to happen in just 90 days. Well, hyperinflation happens fast. We've seen digital P words here, digital riots, can't say these things either, I don't think, and digital bank runs with the Silicon Valley Bank. Everything will happen very fast once people check what I'm saying and see the Federal Reserve has lied about how much money there is in the banks. All dollar holders get destroyed. The thing is, people are still tuned to an analog world where things get gradually worse rather than all at once. But there isn't much forewarning for a digital event. It's 1 and then it's 0, just like the bank runs, except this is the central bank that we're talking about. There are, however, 2 sources of forewarning. First is the chart of the long-term depreciation of the USD versus Bitcoin from less than $1 per Bitcoin to 25k per Bitcoin. Much of the smart money has been voting against the dollar since the financial crisis, and the end is a digital drop off a cliff, almost invisible on the chart, but highly visible in the world. This tweet is the second forewarning. It will be ignored and mocked by people who still trust the US establishment even after the last few years. Who can't imagine that the US banks and media could be lying to them to this extent? But make no mistake, they are, just as they did in 2008 and over the last 10 years. The digital devaluation of the dollar is coming, and it's going to be intense. So if you want to go and check these tweets out, I highly, highly recommend it. I also recommend you go and check all these references. They do indeed check out. Here you can see the United States dollar against Bitcoin. Over time, it's on a trend to 0. So is this possible? Is $1 million in just 90 days time possible? Do we see the collapse of the US dollar? Throw it down in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your opinion. I'm your boy Camel. I hope you're doing well in life. Make sure you come back tomorrow for a deep dive technical analysis and examining the closes for the week. Ready for the week ahead. I'll show you all my live positions. Win, lose, stop, mistake, because I am indeed the realest trader on YouTube. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm your boy Camel. Take care. Cheers. Bye.